Malaysia is a country where the modern and the mystical live together. You'll find skyscrapers piercing the clouds, cafes buzzing with life, and highways glowing under neon lights. But underneath all that progress, there's something ancient that still lingers. People here may use smartphones and live in glass condos, but many still whisper about spirits, omens, and old rituals, and that for a good reason. I was born into a family that never questioned the supernatural. We didn't need ghost stories. We had experience. From a young age, I was surrounded by all things spiritual. Some of it was beautiful prayers, incense, temple bells, but there was also a darker side. I remember smoky jars with tiny stick figures inside, tucked away high on shelves, said to trap evil spirits. I was taught to avoid certain trees at night, and to be wary of red thread tied around nails hammered into banana trees. That wasn't trash. That was a curse. Something deliberately placed, something not to be disturbed. There were old fishermen too. They'd speak softly of songs passed down only to those who lived by the tide. Songs not meant to be sung just anywhere, because if sung at the right moment, at just the right beach, a Puteri Laut, a princess of the sea, was said to rise from the waves. She would be beautiful, walking across the water with a gaze that didn't belong to this world. But the story I want to share isn't about sea spirits or fishermen. It's about my aunt. She was the gentlest person I knew, always kind. She'd cry at romantic dramas, bake you a cake just because you had a bad day, and scream at plastic cockroaches from joke shops. But strangely enough, she never spooked at the mention of otherworldly beings. That's because she had been seeing them for as long as she could remember. It ran in our family, passed down from my grandmother. This ability, or rather this curse, to see the dead. My aunt used to say they weren't always frightening. Sometimes they just looked like ordinary people. Lost, confused. She might be at a crowded restaurant and notice someone sitting silently at a table, staring into space. No one else would acknowledge them. And when she looked away and back again, they'd be gone. She once told me about seeing a woman brushing her hair in the mirror, except the reflection wasn't hers. It moved differently. It smiled at her. But unlike most people cursed with such a gift, my aunt didn't live in fear. She studied the old ways, rooted in Hindu mysticism. She knew how to protect herself and others. She used vibhuti, sacred ash, to ward off evil, recited ancient mantras to drive away restless spirits, and cleansed homes with turmeric water and tulsi leaves. People would call her when their homes started to feel wrong. One afternoon, we got a call from a cousin who lived in Klang. Her young son had been seeing someone. Not a stranger exactly, but not someone they knew. He described a beautiful woman who stood in the corner of his room, always smiling, always beckoning him to come closer. We visited the house that evening. It was a typical terrace home, modest and clean, but I immediately noticed the large tree in front. It was massive. Its roots cracked through the concrete, and its branches stretched over the gate like long, crooked fingers. Our cousin greeted us, clearly shaken. Her son was quiet, clinging to her like he hadn't let go in hours. My aunt sat beside him and asked him to describe the woman. "She's very pretty," he said softly. "She has long black hair, red lips, and her hands and feet have drawings on them." He meant henna, or inai in Malay floral patterns used in weddings and ceremonies. "She's wearing something fancy," he added. "A long dress." My aunt nodded slowly. "A baju kebaya," she said. "It's a traditional Malay dress, often worn for formal occasions or weddings. She keeps smiling at me. She tells me to come out and play." My aunt's face turned serious. That kind of invitation wasn't innocent. She moved from room to room, slowly, her eyes half closed, fingers twitching as if she could feel something invisible in the air. When she reached the boy's bedroom, she stopped cold. "She's here," she said softly. I followed her gaze to the tall cupboard in the corner. At first I saw nothing, until I looked down. There, just beneath the cupboard door, were 2 feet, hovering, They weren't touching the ground. Covered in cracked red henna, the toes curled downward unnaturally. I felt my chest tighten. My aunt immediately began chanting a protective mantra. She lit incense and waved it through the room in slow, deliberate motions, drawing invisible symbols in the air. She sprinkled blessed water around the room and pressed vibhuti onto the boy's forehead. The air grew heavy, cold. Then the cupboard began to shake. A gust of wind swept through the room, and a figurine on a shelf toppled and shattered. The lights flickered. And then, silence. My aunt collapsed into a chair, drained. She nodded. It was done. Our cousin hugged her son, crying softly. The house felt lighter, as if something had finally let go. But just as we stepped outside the gate, she stopped. Her smile disappeared. Her expression changed completely. She looked up at the tree, stared at it like she was seeing something she wished she hadn't. "Get in the car," she said, her voice flat. I looked up too, but saw nothing. Just the dark canopy of branches and a few tangled vines. Still, I didn't ask questions. I knew better than to press her when she looked like that. It wasn't until a few months later that she finally told me. "That thing never really left," she said one night, her voice low. "When we cast her out of the house, she didn't move on. She climbed up into that tree." My stomach turned. She was sitting on one of the thick branches, her feet swinging like a child waiting for permission to come back inside. But her face wasn't the same anymore. She wasn't smiling. She looked betrayed, furious, like she hated us for pushing her out, or she watched us the whole way to the car. I didn't sleep that night. Since then, I never pass a banyan or flame tree without glancing up. Not anymore. Because sometimes, when spirits are barred from entering your home, they don't just vanish. They wait nearby. Sometimes in the roots, sometimes in the shadows, and sometimes up in the trees, watching.